Welcome everyone, this is Miss Orsi with a deep voice because of my cold, sorry about that. We're going to hopefully make this a quick one. This is just dealing with ordered pairs and the coordinate plane, and the learning target is to know features of the rectangular coordinate plane, being able to plot an ordered pair, being able to identify the position of a given point as an ordered pair, and then being able to identify the position by the quadrant or axis that it lies in or on. Okay, so let's just first kind of get to the idea of the rectangular coordinate plane. Down below we've got an example of the rectangular coordinate plane, which I'm sure that you've seen before. Okay, a coordinate plane is made up of two, what we say perpendicular, oops, I want a different color, two perpendicular number lines. And this is a pretty fancy word that we're using here, perpendicular. You might have heard that in some other classes before, but we're looking at two perpendicular number lines. And the idea of being perpendicular means that when they intersect or cross, they make 90-degree angles, or sometimes also called a right angle. Okay, so two perpendicular number lines. In chapter 3, we were using a number line to graph inequalities with the open dots, solid dots, shading, and now we're going to look at two perpendicular number lines. One of them will be horizontal. So we will have a horizontal number line, just like we did in chapter 3. Okay. And horizontal number lines, when we think about the word horizontal, or if you look at the root word in there, the horizon, the horizontal number line is the one that goes side to side. We call that the x-axis. Okay. Horizontal number line goes side to side. That's what we were considering in chapter 3. Going side to side. It's called the x-axis. And the vertical number line, and vertical goes up and down. The vertical number line goes up and down, is called the y-axis. Okay, so we've got the horizontal, which is the x-axis, and the vertical, which is the y-axis. Down below, I'm just going to label those. This is the y-axis, and this is the x-axis. Down here, I can label those two things together. Okay? All right, every point on the grid, not just the ones that are on the grid marks, but every point in here can be labeled as what we call an ordered pair. Now this has two components here. First of all, obviously pair means that there are two things, and ordered means that we have to put them in a special order so that we know what's what. And the order that these come in is that x is always first and y is always second. The x value comes first, the value on the horizontal number line comes first, and the y value comes second. Okay, it's alphabetical, it's not difficult to remember that. Okay, and then so the first value in the ordered pair, the x value has another kind of special name for it. So the first value in the ordered pair is what we call the x coordinate. You might have heard the word coordinates before, like in maps, talking about x or y coordinates, but we call that the x coordinate. And then the second value in the ordered pair is the y coordinate. Oops, not y value, we're going to call it the y coordinate. Okay, tells us where we are in the y direction or in the vertical direction. The x coordinate tells us where we are in the horizontal direction. Ordered pairs or points, when we label them on the rectangular coordinate plane, we use capital letters to label an individual point. Capital letters. Okay. The x and y axis. If if you look at where they meet, where they intersect, and I wish that there was a little bit darker here to see where that was, didn't come out very well, but the x and y axis meet at the point, or with coordinates 0, 0. Right there, x and y axis, this point right there is the point 0, 0. And it's where basically sort of the middle of the x-axis is and the middle of the y-axis. And because that's where we would start counting, either to the right, to the left, up, or down, it's the beginning of our counting, so we call it the origin. Okay, another word for origin is kind of the beginning. Sometimes you'll see the origin denoted with the letter O, because it's kind of the 0, 0, and obviously the O for origin. Next, the x and the y-axis break the coordinate plane into, so if we look at the x and the y-axis, we're breaking that coordinate plane into 4 different regions, which we call quadrants, into 4 quadrants. And that root word quad means 4. Okay. And so in the, if I look at where these cross, right here there's the origin. To the right I would have positive x's, and then up I would have positive x's. This is where we have the first quadrant, and we call that quadrant 1, but we always label the quadrants using Roman numerals. Okay? And then we rotate counterclockwise when we're labeling those quadrants, counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 1 in the upper right. And then rotating counterclockwise, the opposite of the way clock goes, this would be quadrant 2. Roman numeral 2 looks like 2 eyes stuck together. And then counterclockwise, down here, this would be quadrant 3, which looks like 3 eyes stuck together. And then finally, this is quadrant 4. Okay? And as I said before, and quadrant 4 is an I and a V, because in Roman numerals V means 5, and so this just means basically 1 before 5, if you remember that from previous classes. Okay, and as I was saying before, we start with quadrant 1 in the upper right, because this is where we have all positive x's and positive y's. So going in kind of the natural direction. Okay. And then quadrant 2, now we're moving to the left, so it's negative x's, but still positive y's. It kind of looks like somebody's winking at you. Down in quadrant 3, this is the opposite of quadrant 1, so that's where we've got both negative x's and negative y's. Looks like somebody's sleeping. Get a emoticon for somebody sleeping. And then down in quadrant 4, we're to the right, so we've got positive x's, but we've got negative y values, because it's below the x-axis there. Okay. So when we start finding points that lie in each quadrant, I'm just going to kind of pick some points and give an example. If it lies in quadrant 1, we need a positive x and a positive y. So for example, I'm going to plot the point 3, 4. That's in quadrant 1. So from the origin, I would go to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is the point 3, 4. I'm going to label that, let's label that with the capital letter A, to say that that is point A. In quadrant 2, okay, so now I need a negative x and a positive y. So a negative x would be like negative 5, and a positive y would be like positive 7. So if I wanted to label the point, or plot the point negative 5, 7, here's negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the left 5, but then go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'll call that point B, capital letter B. So that's the point B. Something in quadrant 3, I need both negative values. So let's say negative 4, negative 1. So from the origin, go to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 1. We'll call that point C. Okay. And then finally in the fourth quadrant, we need a positive x but a negative y. So let's say positive 2 and then negative 8. So positive 2 would go from the origin to the right 2 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Notice I'm always doing the x coordinate first and then the y coordinate. Let's conveniently call this point D. All right. And then we've got points that lie on the axes. So if I have the x-axis and I want it to be on the x-axis, That means that I have to move either to the left or to the right, but not go up or down at all. So let's say I move to the right 5, but then I don't move up or down at all, so that means that the y-coordinate has to be 0. So go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but not down or up at all. So I'll label that point E on the x-axis. And likewise on the y-axis, that means that I have to move up or down, but not left or right at all. So from the origin, don't go to the left or the right at all. So we'll have point 0. And then let's say I move down 1, 2, 3. And I'll call that point F. So don't move left or right, but then move down 3. And there's point F. So there's just kind of a brief crash course reminding you about what we're doing with the coordinate planes, plotting points, and then those coordinates.